and welcome to the JayandDreshow. I'm your host, Dre.
And I'm your boy, Jay.
And this week we have an interesting topic for discussion. We're going to be discussing what we feel are the top 3 problems facing Black America. We're going to list our points off, and at the end we're going to kind of sum up which ones we think are the most impactful and how to solve those, in our opinion. So I'll let you take it off from the top.
Top 3 things affecting Black America. Number 1, you have to start with economics. Anybody who knows me knows that I'm a Nas fan. I'm a Jay fan as well. And Jay-Z has one of the best lines of 2017. When I had the keys, he said, "How are we still slaves in 2016? I guess it was last year. How are we still slaves in 2016? Until you're on your own, you never be free." That's it, man. And once again, this is not an advocation for segregation or anything of that nature, but what I am saying is, you go to cities, you have a Chinatown, you have China businesses, you have Chinese banks, you have different things in that community where the economic power supports that community. Out west, you have Little Armenia. I could go on and on. You have the Somalians in the northeast. You have different ethnic groups that has their own community with their own grocery stores, with their own banks, with their own support system. And in the African American community, 9 times out of 10, what you have is the hood. And the hood is devoid of economic opportunities. It's devoid of grocery stores that's able to produce or give the community good foods. It's a devoid of banks that are able to finance entrepreneurship in the community. It's devoid of anything that basically can propel lower middle class people or people that's in poverty to the middle or upper middle class. So I would have to say economics. Point blank period.
Okay. It's hard to argue with the impact that economics plays. And for me, I would come at it somewhat a little similar but somewhat differently, in that with economics comes independence and autonomy. And any culture or any community that lacks independence and autonomy is always going to be beholden to whoever holds the keys to their society. So basically, what that means is if there's political agendas or certain things being pushed that is antithetical or may have an adverse impact to you, if you don't have the economic base to stand up and say, no, we're not for this, and properly be able to fight it back, you're always going to be swept up into wherever the wind is of the moment. It goes back to, I want to say it was Dr. Cornel West. I'm paraphrasing it, it's been a while back, but he said basically the nature of black politics is reactive instead of proactive. And the reason it's reactive is because it lacks the economic base that builds the power and influence to be able to influence things and set an agenda in motion proactively. And for me, it actually ties in heavily with, economics ties in heavily with all 3 of my points. One of my biggest points, I would say, is political power. One of the things that I really feel is lacking right now is, one, there's still underrepresentation of black interest in government. That's not to say that we don't have any black politicians and leaders at state, local, and even the federal level, but in terms of the Congress, in terms of the U.S. representatives and those types of governing bodies, we have people there, but we're still far underrepresented. I believe that there's 2 black senators in Congress right now, Cory Booker and Tim Scott from
South Carolina. He's a Republican.
South Carolina and New Jersey, respectively. And black people comprise roughly about 15% of the population, and we have 2 senators out of a body of 100. So I feel that, one, we need more representation, and for the representation that we do have, what we need out of them is the will to advance an agenda that would advance the people, and the will to enact it by any means necessary. One thing that I really look at the other side of the aisle and I get from it is the Republicans are willing to hold the whole party hostage routinely for almost every single issue that gets brought up. It's a small group of representatives called the Freedom Caucus.
Yeah.
And it can't be more than about maybe 30 representatives from southern states. But they shape and influence virtually all the legislation that gets put to the floor. And the reason is because they had the political will to say, you know what, we will shoot down and be a thorn in the side of every effort if you don't address our needs and concerns. And I feel that in a lot of regards, in a lot of respects, we need an agenda of 2 or 3 items, and every year, no matter what it is, they have to impose their will and say that certain things are not going to go through and get done unless these things are addressed in some substantive way.
So before I go to my point 2, but did you transition into your point 2 with the political power? Okay. So now I would say PTSD, man. PTSD, post-traumatic slavery disorder, man. And I'm piggybacking off of PTSD, post-traumatic stress disorder. And for those who don't know, PTSD is a condition where somebody has been through a traumatic situation, such as a shooting, horrific death in front of them. It affects them greatly in the time of life that happens after that moment. So what I mean by post-traumatic slavery disorder is this. You can't enslave people for 300 years, 400 years, then have Jim Crow and legal segregation for another 100 years and expect things to change overnight. You said an interesting point in another video, to the point of white supremacy is not just propelled by Caucasians. It's at its best when other ethnic groups propel it themselves. So we propel that we are less than other ethnic groups and races. We devalue our women. We devalue education. And it's reasons why, we wasn't given the opportunities as other people to assume higher degrees at a rate as other people. But that PTSD, man, has affected our community in a great manner. It's the crab in the bucket mentality. If Andre is driving a Bentley, instead of celebrating that he's driving a nice car, oh man, he's with the other side. He's not with us. He's with the man. Just the crab in the bucket. I want all us doing bad together, because if one person is doing better than the other person, then they obviously doing something wrong. It has to be the Illuminati. Even on the flip side, I'm better than you mentality, or what some people will refer to as the house Negro mentality. And when I say that, I mean this: people who are doing well for themselves that turn around and say, well, if I did it, you can do it. No, man. Each one teach one, man. It's about reaching back and helping those that you grew up with. So I believe that stress is not even a word, just the absolute horrificness of slavery, of Jim Crow, of the transatlantic slave trade, of the socioeconomic disadvantages Black Americans are placed in, has hindered us, in my opinion, till this exact day.
That's an interesting take. That's one where I do agree that. Let me rephrase it. For me, I agree that in some instances there needs to be a reset of the mentality in Black America, because you have people who will say that there's this ever ambiguous and omnipresent man that's keeping them from opportunity and keeping them from excelling and getting to certain things. And I'm not saying that discrimination doesn't exist. Don't get me wrong there. But I do believe that in some cases it's become a crutch, just blatantly. Like if I didn't get that promotion, it wasn't because, you know what, I need to go back to the grind a little bit harder. It's because I was black, or it's because I'm a woman, or whatever, you know. And unless you really have something substantive to back that up, like, you really just doing yourself a disservice. Because I really do believe that in 2017, not saying that no discrimination exists at all. I'm not saying that. In 2017, things are a lot fairer than they've ever been. And
factor.
To think, like, if our great grandma was still alive, our great grandmother was a child of slaves. We're only about 4 generations removed from slavery as a family.
She died in 1999. If you was listening, so we knew her. Is what you're trying to say.
Relatively recently, we were 10 when she passed, and it's one of those things where I think for some folks who don't have that relation of other ethnicities, who hear us talk about certain things, one, for us and for our relatives, Jim Crow and slavery was not that long ago. My father went through Jim Crow. Your mother went through Jim Crow.
Factor.
So, in terms of wealth building, yeah, I get it. Like, in terms of the rest of America, basically, everybody else had a 400-year head start in a lot of sense. But I still believe that with a lot of hard work, that if you set your mind to something and that you're truly determined to it,
you can do it.
That, you know what, those barriers and roadblocks that would hinder someone of, say, 20, 30 years ago, I believe they've been knocked down and minimalized to that extent of today. And for my third point, though, I really feel that educational reform would be big for Black America, because in Black America, it's kind of becoming a tale of two cities in a sense. You have the Black upper middle class is one of the fastest growing demographics in America, yet the rest of the demographic isn't doing that well. And a lot of it has to do with education. There's statistics that show that the Black woman is one of the most educated people in America, and conversely, the Black male is one of the least educated. And I think you have to really address that in two ways. I think you have to reform curriculums that are being taught in grade schools. I remember speaking with some older gentlemen, and one thing I noticed when I speak to a lot of individuals that's in their 40s and 50s, a lot of them know a trade of some sort. A lot of them know carpentry. A lot of them know plumbing. A lot of them know at least some basic electrical and circuitry, and they learned it in high school. A lot of them, I didn't even know this until speak to a lot of them, but a lot of high schools, they taught you, in addition to your general core classes, they taught you something related to a trade. And I think we need to bring some of that back, because while college is great, I do feel that for college to truly benefit you and for you to get the most out of it, you have to know what you want to do and what you want to be after. A general studies degree is, I don't want to say worthless, but it's not as valuable to employers as something specialized, like, say, for instance,
specification.
yeah. Hey, I'm going to be a marketer. Hey, I'm going to be a psychologist. You know, I'm going to go for a nursing program or something like that. You know, and not only that, but I think also we have to find ways to make higher education more available and affordable to Black youth. Whether that's making more scholarship programs, or even just in some instances, I feel like we need to make more of our own schools. Because
let me jump in right now. I'm throwing right back to you. When I heard you say that, I'm gonna ask Dre this question. Now, once again, let's be clear. We're not segregationists by any means. We believe that every group of people, every kind of people can work together for the betterment of this country. But I saw something that said that African Americans wonder why they're still so downtrodden. But they go to schools where basically they're educated from what we call Western civilization mindset. Basically, for lack of better words, a European view of the way world history works. And the Post was saying that we need to come together and build our own schools, educate our own children the way that we see fit. Now, I got two questions I want to pose to you. Number one, wouldn't that make you a segregationist? And number two, is that feasible in today's time?
does that make you a segregationist? No. Segregation is locking others out and being separate of. So when I say build your own schools, what I'm really getting at is you need not necessarily that you need a school for black kids and black kids only. What I'm getting at is you need a school where certain things are taught and when you have control of that curriculum. Because I'm not a really big proponent of private schools, but one thing I do like about private schools is that they do have a greater degree of control than public institutions. For instance, a lot of people don't even know this. All of our history books, pretty much, virtually all the history books, all the textbooks in the country come from Texas, from McGraw-Hill. And one big example I'll say before moving on to your next point, a lot of people don't know this, but the way certain things in history is covered and relayed, it matters. And
slaves was indentured servants according to McGraw-Hill, but
no, exactly. They gloss over slavery. They gloss over the civil rights movement. There's a group of people who talk about changing history and about others wanting to change history, but they're doing it themselves. And what I'm getting at when I say we need our own is, one, I teach my son something. I try to teach him something new every time I'm with him. But we need a mechanism to make sure that certain knowledge isn't lost, that certain things aren't forgotten, that certain contributions aren't taken from who they rightfully belong to and given to others in the grand scheme of things. And what was your second point?
My second point is PTSD.
No. The second question to me.
Is it feasible? And before, I guess it's kind of a bad question because it is. I think you see now you have the new integration of charter schools. That's basically all the charter schools is. It's a group of people that's saying we're not a private school. We're not going to exclude anybody from these types of schools. But this is a school where we're going to teach this specific doctrine. You have charter schools that basically the whole thing is specific to philosophy, to psychology. It's a new charter school in Charleston. Their school is based on athletics. It's based on Wade Hampton played them last week. I forgot the name of the school, but you can look it up. Basically, the school is designed to give student athletes more than needed amount of time to concentrate on their athletic trade. And it's a trade nonetheless because it can easily pay for college. So, that's kind of a bad question, but I'm really glad that you touched on the whole, and I really like how you put that, because when people say that, they misconstrue that into segregationism. And you did that eloquently. It's not that. It's just stating that every community has schools. So that community has to have some sort of stake in what's being taught to their children. I totally agree.
Yeah, exactly. And I would say, like, you said it better than myself. Like, I think it's wholly feasible in today's days and times to establish certain schools. The only thing is, I want to make this point. I want to make it very clear. Private and public charters are not a replacement for traditional public schools as a whole. From a number standpoint, it is purely unfeasible for private and charter institutions to take on the educational load, because they in most states they represent at best about 10% of the available schools. They only hold about 10% of the state's children. So we have to reform public schools, but there's also nothing wrong with having other institutions in the sense of free market competition that teach certain things and values that is near and dear to your community. Because at the end of the day, if somebody isn't teaching those things, why shouldn't you go out and teach it yourself?
Very cool. And I would have to say number 3, man. And I could go with education, but I'm just go with. And I remember what I said. Now I said rap music. That's my third. I said rap music. It was a statistic that was released, right? That said at this point in time, the most money making genre, the genre that makes the most amount of money, is hip hop. It's rap music. They're what they call the cash kings. They're the cash kings. It's a fact. And one thing we know about a capitalistic society, he who controls the money controls the society. But what's the problem? The problem is the execs at the record labels, they're not the people that's rapping. The people on the radio station sound like me, probably got the same viewpoints as me, but the guy who owns the radio station, he doesn't look like me. For example, Radio 1, iHeartRadio, owns the Breakfast Club. The Breakfast Club is probably the most important radio station in Black America, in hip-hop culture, let me say that, in hip-hop culture. But look who they're owned by. So, hip-hop, man, music, we are musical people. As music goes, first of all, as the youth goes, as goes our society. And our youth get a lot of their beliefs and ideas from the music. Look at the clothing the rappers wear, and go outside and look at what the kids in the neighborhood wear. Look at the lingo the rappers use, go outside and listen to the lingo the kids use. So if all rappers came together, they say, you know what, this whole woke thing, we're going to get behind it 100, we changing it up. Afrocentrism, whatever you want to call it, we're coming with a mindset of just a mental renaissance of the mind, of preaching economics, of preaching peace, of preaching our mothers, our daughters, our aunts, our sisters are beautiful, of preaching gun violence is bad, of preaching entrepreneurship, of preaching spirituality in some form of fashion. I guarantee you that we would see a renaissance of the people. Because as goes music, and the main musical genre that young Black Americans listen to is hip-hop, as go our culture. So I would say rap music and hip-hop.
Okay. That's I think that was a debate in and of itself. Let me just pose this question to you before we give our final thoughts and wrap out. Do you think that the music is a reflection of the greater society, or do you think that the music is driving society to a certain place?
A little bit of both, man. And that's going to sound like a generic answer, but the answer is a little bit of both. It's kind of going back to one of our earlier videos when we speak about the disadvantages that Black American face. Do you blame the man? Like, say a guy's arrested. Do you look at him and say, man, you stupid, you got arrested, what are you doing? Or do you look at the system that got him arrested? Same thing with music. Music is a reflection of society, but music also affects society to make that reflection. So
it's cyclical.
It's cyclical, but the reason why I say it can change is because of this. Perception is reality. Hollywood turned Black people into dumb yes massa to the minstrel shows. So people all over the world that saw that believe this is how Black people act. They didn't see it as a movie. They saw this as fact. So at the end of the day, while we know there's ills Look at it today. Music today is becoming more black girls rock, black girls magic, this, and that. And you starting to see things it's changing. So what I'm saying is not lying, but let's focus on if music and hip hop, if 95% of it focus on one uplifting type of sound, then that reflection will hit the majority of the community, and we will begin to see that, because perception is reality, and perception over time can become reality, in my opinion.
No, I think that's a good way to put it, because just to piggyback off your point a little bit, I will say this. I feel like media as a whole is very important, because although this country is very diverse, the diversity is really regionalized. Mm-hmm. There's more Asians out west. There's more black people in the major cities and down south. You know, there's more European immigration up in the Northeast, so on and so forth. And a lot of times, people haven't had a chance to come in contact with someone of some of these groups. So all they have to go off of is the media. And I can say for myself, like I hadn't met a lot of people until I got to college, but that's the first time I met somebody Middle Eastern, and it was a beautiful young girl, and she wasn't what I traditionally thought of when I thought, you know, an Arab, especially an Arab teen from, you know, from Iraq. Like, you know, she was really not much different than somebody growing up anywhere else in America. But because of the media portrayal, I was kind of conditioned to think, oh, okay, Arab, you got the full burqa and everything on, and, you know, you're very devout and all this. And it's like, nah, that's not to say that she wasn't devout in her faith or anything like that, but it's like, yo, they're people just like us. And I feel like that gets lost a lot of times, because when you look at media and certain stereotypes and portrayals, it does become perpetuated, and it affects how people deal with you.
All the time. It's funny that we had an Asian guy, Chinese guy, Eric Young?
Yep.
He came to our class, I remember, and I always been kind of a reader and more cognitive of different ethnic groups and peoples. But I remember sitting in class and this guy was like, hey man, teach me some karate. And I don't know karate, and actually, I'm thinking, I don't want to put words in his mouth. He basically said karate is like it's a special thing over there. But but it's like it's almost like a secret society thing almost. It's not people do it, but it's something that it's a spiritual aspect to it. It's not just a common thing. That's the best way I can put it. But defending the guy who said it, it's what's perpetuated on TV. Anytime you see an Asian guy in America on TV, he's usually some kind of kung fu master or doing some kind of kung fu, right? And either that or he's very smart. So, and actually Eric was not a great student. So it's like, I mean, but the perception of it is smart kung fu, mathematics kung fu. And perception, man, perception in media means a lot. That's why I think hip-hop music can change a lot of things about Black America.
Okay, so to wrap this up, if hypothetically speaking, if one thing could be changed tomorrow out of the things that you listed, which one do you think would make the greatest change?
Economic power. Economic power, man. Just the power. Economic power. Just the ability to not seek change, but to make change. If you don't have the economic ability to do it, then you're hollering at more. That's my opinion.
I completely concur. So the man controls his own dollar, he does not control his own fate.
That's it. That's it.
Well, thank you for your time. That's been it for us this week on the JayandDreshow Show. I'm your host, Jay.
Well, this is Dre, and I'm your boy, Jay. But please don't forget to like, comment, subscribe, share. Thank you for watching our videos. We appreciate you. Peace.
Good night.
Tell me pretty lies, look me in the face. Tell me that you love me.